Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, the first speaker of a wonderful event. Um, so, when I was thinking of a topic to present here, and it's an important thing that you term is that ideas worth sharing, I thought I'll talk about something that's very close to my heart. What I want to talk to you about is about something that all of us love to do. All of us love to travel. And I think this goes across generations, goes across hundreds of years. Humankind has always been curious, has always wanted to set out, seek new places, make more connections. Now, in this intrinsic nature of ours, I want to bring in certain elements that have always influenced me, and I believe that are important for us, all of us as well. I want to talk to you about the pluses and minuses of tourism. I wanted to spend a moment on the impacts of our travel. Why do we travel? And when we travel, what happens? It has been my privilege to be part of the tourism sector uh, of Kerala, of India, and I've been part of this whole growth story of our wonderful destination called Kerala. But my presentation will be talking about traveling responsibly. And traveling responsibly is a theme that has been recurrent in my engagement with tourism. We will look at how tourism impacts destinations and how certain solutions have emerged from our own land and across the world, how tourist entrepreneurs, and stakeholders are interacting with each other to find solutions to issues that have come out of tourism. Right. So, what I want to talk to you about are the joys of travel and the perils of travel. Now, who doesn't want to travel? We travel for a lot of things. We know that tourism means business travel. It could mean traveling for medical care. It could be traveling to meet relations. But going to talk about traveling for pleasure, leisure travel. All of us do it. Why do we do it? Do it primarily for relaxation. Not very sure whether the laser is working. So we travel primarily to relax. We are all busy people. We are in stressed lives. We need to find some time to take a break, relax, unwind ourselves. But we also try to do this because there is an inherent urge in us to seek new things, for adventure, to find new experiences, to have that rush of adrenaline when you get onto a bike and travel down the road. There is also this huge element of bonding. We travel because we want, as humans, we want to establish better connections with each other, perhaps within oneself, with our family members when we travel. We find new ways of connecting to our brothers, our sister, our parents. As friends, we become thicker friends. We find elements in our friendship when we travel. When working colleagues travel, we find new ways to connect. And that connections enrich our work when we come back. So there are numerous ways in which we connect with each other. But I think for me, the most important thing is curiosity. We are all curious creatures. We want to touch each other. We want to understand new things. We want to keep learning. And I think travel is the best way to actually enrich ourselves through our curious nature. But pause for a moment and let's look at what are the negatives. What are the perils of travel? I don't need to say this too many times because all of you in your travels must have seen this happen. There will certainly be some people who might who might see this as one way of expressing themselves in a very loud manner. We are insensitive to fellow travelers, we are insensitive to the places we go. In some places, we intrude into people's lives, their livelihoods, their families. We never give it a thought. We take photographs without consent. We are loud, we pass comments, we pass judgments about areas. These things come naturally, particularly when you travel in a group and there is a certain boisterous nature to us. We are not enough, sensitive enough to the people who live in those areas where we travel to. It can also be very harmful. We don't think about the impact that our travel makes on destinations. Think about the number of straws that we've discarded, the papers, the materials that we've thrown away, the use and throw stuff that we take along with us. All those things, where do these go? Who manages these things? So tourism has a huge plus side for all of us, but tourism has a huge negative side that some of us, at least, are not sensitive enough about. I just want to pause here for a moment and talk about tourism in our state, because this holds a lot of lessons for us, and will lead me to the next point which I want to make before you. Tourism in Kerala was a late entrant. Till about 30 years ago, we were hardly known across the world. But in the early 90s, we had some major hotel chains and resorts that came to us, that came to this land and set up hotels and resorts. Particularly the Taj Group, has to be credited for putting us in the global map. They were supported by a lot of international tour operators who positioned us, who positioned Kerala in a particular way before the world. And that sort of started this growth, and it's a rapid growth story. Today, tens of thousands of people are employed, and tourism has become a very dominant force in our economy. But one of the things that happened early was destinations. There was a few destinations in which hotels and resorts came up. One of the first ones was Kovalam in the south. And then later the city of Kochi became very popular. Later still, destinations like Munnar came up. One of the characteristics of this growth was that there were small areas which witnessed dense development, dense construction, and these are all constructed and run by major corporates. So these people saw the local community as nuisances, as a hindrance, as an obstruction to the people that came there. They presented a very sanitized, clean, beautiful version of Kerala, which they did not want the local community to come and spoil. It was a message that sent across, we have a very beautiful place, come over here, we'll make sure that you have an experience which is untainted by local influences and people, coming and disturbing you. That's why I call this as an enclave development. Enclaves are small areas within a larger area which is not influenced by the larger area. What happened is that through this enclave kind of development, destinations grew, tourism grew, but at the cost of a loss of trust of the local community. What does the local community say? We don't get any benefits from this, we don't get employment. These people spoil our cultural fabric. Our local governments, panchayats, or municipalities are neglected, they are not part of the decision-making process. So the whole environment was about mistrust. The environment was about suspicion. What are these guys doing here? Why are these people here in my backyard? Why are they spoiling the environment in which my children, my friends, are being disturbed? So that is the reason why we say that when you lose the local connect, you lose the local community. Not only do you lose them, but you create a whole constituency that is against this whole economic activity called tourism. This is a point which we, in the tourism department, we have been quite concerned about, because on the one side, you had huge influx of tourists. On the other side, you had a disgruntled population, people who did not think that it was a useful activity, and a community that was given the burden of handling the pollution, the waste, and all that was generated there. It is a potent mixture for a huge conflict, for a huge confrontation. And that's where some of us, I was, privileged enough to be part of the tourism movement over 20 years. This is something that happened about 16, 18 years ago. When we sat down and looked at this whole impact, we had a rapidly increasing 20% annual increasing economic sector. And yet there was such a lopsided development that people who are supposed to be beneficiaries of this economic activity do not seem to take ownership, do not seem to like this. We had criticism in the media. We said people, tourists are coming here for sex. People are going to destroy our local cultural ethic, cultural legacies, all this. So when we sat down with the stakeholders, and this happened in one of the most wonderful destinations that we have, Kumaragam, we sat down with the stakeholders and we start talking to each other. And then we realized that there is a whole divide here. And that divide has happened because tourism entrepreneurs, tourism enterprises, and the tourism investors have become insensitive to where they are doing their business. What is their connect to Kumaragam? That is what the local government says. The panchayat president says, they don't even know me. I am the local panchayat president. The local ladies say that, look, these people insult us because they take photographs of us. They don't give us any credit. Our privacy is being invaded by these people. What is the benefit of having a few resorts here except that their waste becomes our problem? So that's how we talked about the triple bottom line approach. We decided that we have to do this dialogue with everybody, talking about the three important aspects of tourism, to trying to relook at tourism. One of the things is saying the triple bottom line of responsible tourism. Now, responsible tourism is not something we invented. The world over, similar problems were being approached by different people, different stakeholders. And they all said that unless we act responsibly, tourism will become self-defeating. So what is responsible tourism? Economic responsibility. Economic responsibility means if there is tourism in a community, the benefits of that tourism activity should go to the local community. It should not be taken away by a few people, by a few hoteliers, they take away the benefits. How does the local community benefit? Number one. Number two, you must remember that economic responsibility means that the benefits should also be shared in the community. It should not go to one or two people in the community, but should be shared. So what is socio-cultural responsibility? We talked about boorish behavior. Now, socio-cultural responsibility means that the tourist should be respectful. They should be sensitive to the local cultural mores, the ethics, the local cultural legacy of the place. How do you approach an art form respectfully? How do you understand how the rituals work? When you are socially and culturally responsible, you will become more sensitive. You will read up about it. You will be curious enough to understand this in a little more depth. Rather than see art forms on stages, you would want to see art forms in their actual area. And the last thing is, of course, environmental responsibility. That actually is not tourism alone everywhere. We as humans, we are supposed to behave more and more responsibly when it comes to the environment. How do we decrease our impact on the environment? How do we make sure that we do reuse, we recycle? How do we make sure that the hotels that we use also adopt the same practices? So this kind of a dialogue brought us into finding local solutions. We said, okay, in Komaragam, how do we make sure that more and more stuff can be procured locally? How do we make sure that there are connections between hotels and the local community? And that led to developing models through which we started procurement of local materials, fruits, vegetables, eggs. We also developed networks through which more and more local community members, youths, can find employment in the hotels and industries there. We also targeted women because they form a critical group of people in our villages. How do we empower women? And for that empowerment, they will need to be trained. They will need to upskill themselves to make sure that they provide certain services to the tourism sector, which can be consumed by the tourists. But for that, what kind of training programs should we do? The whole responsible tourism framework, and I'm leaving this point with you, is not for Kumarigam alone. This model has been used elsewhere now. We are urging people, all stakeholders in tourism, to behave in a more responsible manner. I talked about tourists earlier how we have to behave, all of us as travelers can behave more responsibly. We talked about hoteliers whose responsible behavior is by making sure that the community is with them, how they source materials from them, how they engage with the community. As I mentioned, there are several aspects to responsible tourism. Local arts and crafts, they need support. When you buy souvenirs, do you spare a thought as to how who made these souvenirs? Are they coming from China? Or are you helping a local worker, a local artisan by buying something? So when you go next, this thought should be on our minds. We should say, okay, here's my opportunity to buy something as a keepsake, but let that be bought from something that a local artisan made. When you see a local art form, make sure that you actually ask to see a local art form and pay for it. That way, you are providing a livelihood to the local artist, a dancer, a ritual art performer. Grassroots level community participation. When you talk about this kind of involvement, naturally, the local government, the local panchayat people, everybody becomes involved in tourism and say, hey, let us provide these services to tourists that will make them happy, that will bring money to us. Additional income from tourism. Now, we are saying nobody should be dependent completely on tourism. These kinds of programs that we do are additional income sources for the local community. For women, for instance, when they are homemakers, but they have certain skills in our villages which are very interesting. Old traditional villages, the ladies can show us very, very interesting things that they do. The vegetables in their garden, okay, how you make stuff out of locally available materials, the local cuisine, all these are in the hands of women. So it brings women's empowerment. And as I mentioned, local procurement of goods and services from the local community. There is no additional investment. We are not talking about huge investments here. We are only saying let us stimulate the local economy using the powerful engine of tourism. It complements the relationship. In fact, after we established this RT framework, a lot of tourists have said that, look, this gave me a very different holiday. It made me understand the land, the people, much beyond a beautiful scenery which I can take a photograph. It made me connect with the local population, and I go back as a better person. I have been enriched by this. So I will conclude here because I just wanted to lay an idea of how tourism communities, destinations engage with each other. From an earlier position of confrontation, today people cooperate, agencies cooperate, institutions cooperate. So what I want to leave you with is this idea that all of us, when we enjoy our holidays, we can do better. Do a little bit more research. Think about your impact on the environment. Ask the right questions. Find the right service providers. Eat locally, procure locally, buy locally. Be respectful and mindful of the cultures of where we go. And through this, I am sure that you will have a much more fulfilling, much more interesting, much more adventurous holiday. Best of luck to all of you. Thank you.